Next question. Tell us a story about buds.
So buds is the basic SEAL training that you see on TV and that you see people carrying logs on their heads and boats around and doing push-ups and pull-ups and getting wet and sandy. And the reason that I don't talk about buds a lot is because it's a tiny, tiny fraction of what the SEAL teams is all about. Mm-hmm. And in fact, when you get in the SEAL teams, you realize that buds is nothing more than a screening process to weed out people that don't really want to be there. Mm. But if you compare it to what you have to do once you get in the teams, it's actually nothing. Because there's no way that you can compare, hey, you got to go get in cold ocean water and then roll around in the sand. Mm. Oh, no. And I always think back to the first time when I was at Camp Corregidor, and I'm rolling out on the first major operation we were doing in the Malab district of Ramadi, and there's tires burning the street, there's smoke, you can hear the gunfire. Getting wet and sandy and being cold is a joke compared to that. Mm. So that's why the whole buds thing is something that it's not that big of a deal. Yeah. And I think some guys try and turn it into a big deal, especially if that was kind of the highlight of their career was going through SEAL training. Yeah. But if you were in the teams and you deployed overseas, then that shouldn't be the highlight of your career. It shouldn't be the highlight of your knowledge. It shouldn't be the highlight of the man test that people like to consider buds. It's not a man test. It means you didn't quit being cold. Good job.
And to that point, I think it's, for those folks that didn't really get tested in combat or didn't get a chance to go out on the battlefield and experience the just incredible physical nature of combat and how difficult it is, then, buds is like everything. And so they talk about buds all the time. And so it's kind of this legendary thing. And it's a great training program. It's been around for a long time. It screens out the people that don't have the characteristics, as Jocko said, that we think are going to be successful, and it works, and we should keep those standards high, and we should push that. I thought Buds was a pretty good time. We had some great times in Buds. I love the guys I went through Buds with, most of them, but it's got nothing on combat. And it's interesting that some of the big political discussions today, one of them is the integration of women into the SEAL teams, into special operations, into infantry units, and everyone's always focused on, well, if they can meet standards and if they're, if they can make it through training, then they should be able to go out and serve, right? And they're focused on training, and the people they're talking about training at the highest levels because they don't know what it's like to be in real combat, and real combat is infinitely harder than the toughest. I mean, why are we talking about integrating the NFL? Well, you got huge, big, strong guys that are smashing each other, and yet that's. Maybe you get a concussion. Maybe you tear your ACL. Maybe you break your elbow, or snap your wrist. You're not going to get killed. Very rarely does someone get killed in the football game, right? Mm-hmm. Where combat is infinitely harder than that, infinitely more difficult than that. And so, and unlike a football game that's over in just a couple of hours, you're talking about something that can last weeks, months, even years. Yeah. And it's just the physical nature of combat cannot be overstated. It is incredibly difficult. And when people are shocked to hear that, they're like, hey, tell me some stories about Buds. Like, Buds is carry some logs, man. Don't quit. Okay. I mean, it's make it through, Yeah. It's combat where you're and you'll see it too. Guys who excelled in Buds because they're great athletes, sometimes will go to the battlefield and they're like, I remember the first time that I saw an IED going off about a block away from me. And we were sitting on the rooftop in a sniper position. This is my first deployment before Jocko and I were working together. And all of a sudden, there's a 100-foot fireball that goes up in the air. I mean, the blast wave hits me and just knocks me on my ass. And just metal fragments and shards of concrete and stuff is just raining down all over the place from a block away, from us. And it was like, damn, that is not something I want to be standing on or riding in a vehicle when you hit that thing. And when you see something like that, like just the kinetic energy of rounds coming in, and just, you know, think of the biggest, strongest guy you can imagine with a sledgehammer just smashing a wall next to you, and you know, multiply that times 700 or 800 rounds a minute for a belt-fed machine gun. And I mean, it's incredibly difficult and dangerous and overwhelming. And so you see some of the toughest guys that did well in buds are like, ooh, not necessarily eager to go out in that. And so it's a whole new level of difficulty, and it's just it can't be overstated. So I think that it's the difficulties of combat, again, just cannot be overstated. People need to understand what the reality of that is like. And I think this idea that America is not going to, we kind of dictate the nature of wars, and, you know, as we've been told, the tide of war is receding, and it's just not true. As Jocko said in his retirement speech, the nature of war does not change, and we're going to always have to fight wars. We're going to always have to be in difficult conflicts. We don't get to choose that, and so we better be ready for those difficulties.
In the late 90s, we would hear that from senior leadership that, you know, look, the direct action mission, we're not going to be doing those anymore. Why would we do a direct action mission when we can send in a Tomahawk missile? And then, why would we do a reconnaissance when we can send over a drone? And why would we go clear buildings house to house when we have technology that can put bombs right into buildings? So this idea that we're going to have the ground wars are over, we need to move on to the next phase of warfare and adapt to a new way of doing things. And of course, what was it? 8 years later, September 11th happened. We spent 15 years in Afghanistan and 10 years in Iraq, that on the ground doing those very missions that everyone thought we would never do again. So yes, the nature of war does not change.
And it's not about technology either. You know, some of the guys that don't make it through that training think, oh man, if I can just get through somehow, and I'll get all this cool gear, and I'll have night vision and lasers, and I'll be badass. And it's like, it's not about that. And while we need to invest in technology, certainly, and equip our military accordingly, it's the people that matter. It's leadership at all levels that matter. You know, one of my favorite quotes from the hero of the Pacific War, who was in charge of the entire, he was the commander-in-chief of all forces, U.S. forces in the Pacific, a guy named Chester Nimitz, Fleet Admiral Chester Nimitz, good old boy from Central Texas. And he said, our armament must be adequate to the needs, but our faith is not primarily in these machines of defense, but in ourselves. And I mean, that's just exactly true. And we've got to always push those standards, keep those standards high, prepare people for the difficulties of real, actual combat, and just how physically demanding it is and crushing it can be, and be ready so that we can execute and we can win.